Right now, somewhere in the world, someone just got paid. They did everything right. They worked the hours, stayed consistent, avoided unnecessary risk, and with that paycheck, they made the responsible move. They saved a portion, put it aside, left it untouched, did exactly what they were told would lead to stability. And at that exact same moment, someone else, who didn't work those hours, is making more money from that same system, not by working harder, not by being more disciplined, but by owning something. That's the part no one really explains, because on the surface, it looks fair, but it's not really built around effort. It's built around ownership. And once you see that, it's very hard to unsee. For a long time, the formula was simple. Work hard, earn income, save consistently, build a stable life. And, for a while, that worked. In slower economies, more predictable systems, when wages and costs moved at almost the same pace. But that version of the system has quietly changed, not all at once, not dramatically, just slowly enough that most people didn't notice. Wages have mostly flattened. Costs haven't. And assets, things like real estate, stocks, businesses, they've been climbing much faster. And that's where things start to split. Because now, two people can follow the same advice and end up in completely different places. Let's simplify it. Imagine two people, same job, same salary, same starting point. Every month, they both earn money from their work. That part is identical. But what happens next? That's where things change. The first person sees money as something to protect. So they save it. They keep it safe. They avoid anything uncertain. Their goal is stability. The second person sees money differently, not as something to store, but something to use. They move it into assets, things that can grow, things that can generate more money. First, the difference is almost invisible. Their lives look the same. Same apartment, same expenses, same routines, nothing dramatic, no clear advantage. But underneath, something very different is happening, because money that is saved, it waits. Money that is invested, it works. Simple idea. But the outcome is not simple at all, because time treats those two choices very differently. It amplifies them, slowly at first, then suddenly. Let's look at the math. Honestly, if you save $10,000 at 1% after a year, you make $100. If you invest that same $10,000 at 10%, you make $1,000. That difference is noticeable, but not shocking. The real shift comes next, because now the second person has a bigger base, and growth builds on that base. Year after year, 10,000 becomes 11, then 12, then 13, not because they worked more, but because the system compounds. Meanwhile, the first person is still protecting the original 10,000, which, quietly, is losing value. Because inflation never stops. It never pauses. It slowly reduces what that money can actually do. So, one person is moving forward, the other is standing still, on ground that's slowly shrinking. And over time, that gap becomes distance, then momentum, then acceleration, and this is where the system reveals itself. It doesn't just reward growth, it rewards acceleration, because once your money is working, new doors start opening, better investments, lower borrowing costs, more opportunities. But here's the catch. Those things don't appear at the beginning. They show up after you already have momentum. It's a loop. The more you have working, the easier it becomes to grow more. And the less you have, the more you depend on income, which is the slowest way to build wealth. So when people say, the rich get richer, that's not the full story. The real story is the rich get richer faster, and that speed difference changes everything. Now let's talk about something uncomfortable. Debt. For most people, debt feels dangerous, and honestly, it can be. High interest, stress, limited flexibility. In that context, debt is a problem, but there's another version of debt, one that works very differently. When someone owns assets, borrowing becomes easier, not because they're smarter, but because they're less risky to lenders. They get access to cheaper money, and they don't use it to spend. They use it to invest. So now, if they borrow at 5% and earn 10%, that gap becomes profit. They're not just using their own money. They're using access, and access scales. Now, compare that to someone without assets. If they borrow, it's usually for consumption, a car, a phone, an emergency. The money disappears, but the debt stays. Same concept, completely different result. For one person, debt builds wealth. For the other, it holds them back. At this point, it might sound like mindset, but not in the usual way. This isn't about positive thinking or motivation. It's structural. It's about how money flows, where it goes, and what it's connected to. Because the advice most people hear, work hard, save money, avoid risk, it's not wrong, it's just incomplete. It was built for a different system, one where stability was enough. Today, stability often means falling behind, slowly, quietly, but consistently. There's an irony here. What feels safe in the short term can create long-term fragility, and what feels uncertain, when done carefully, can actually reduce risk over time, not remove it, but manage it. And this doesn't require extreme risk. It's not about gambling or chasing trends. It's about understanding what money actually does, because money isn't just something you hold. It interacts with the system. If it sits still, it weakens. If it moves, it grows. Now zoom out. This isn't just about individuals. This is happening everywhere, across millions of people, making similar choices. When more people stay in protection mode, spending slows, growth becomes uneven, and wealth concentrates, not because of a conspiracy, but because of patterns repeated again and again. And once that gap gets large enough, it starts reinforcing itself through access, through education, through opportunity. Those ahead understand the system better. Those behind have fewer options at that point. Catching up isn't just hard. It requires playing a completely different game, and time makes all of this stronger. Small differences don't stay small. They stretch, they expand, they multiply. 5 years feels manageable. 10 years, you start to see the gap. 20 years, you're looking at completely different lives, and by then, it looks like something else. Talent, discipline, luck. But most of it comes from repeated patterns where money went, what it was expected to do, and whether it was used or just held. There's also something psychological underneath all of this. If money feels scarce, you protect it. If it feels like a tool, you use it. Protection limits exposure, but it also limits growth. Direction creates outcomes, but it requires accepting uncertainty. Neither approach is completely wrong, but only one scales. And here's the part that rarely gets said. At some point, the system stops being about effort and starts being about position, where you are, what you own, what you can access, and how fast you can move. So that leaves a question, one that doesn't have a simple answer. If the system is built this way, if it keeps moving wealth toward asset owners, if effort alone isn't enough anymore, then what is everyone else really competing for? And more importantly, at what point does playing by the old rules stop working completely?